Om Sahanā-Vavatu, Bhunaktu, Vīryam, Karavā-vahai, Tejas, Vinā, Vadhīta, Mastu, Vidvishā-Vahai. Om Shānti, Shānti, Shāntihi. Humble of Satguru Sivananda Maharaji ki, and for all of the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, did we hear Saint Therese last night talking about, and we had some good questions and discussion after the film. I don't know whether to call it a documentary, drama, I guess. What would you call it? So, and for those of us joining online, I'll add the link. But we were talking yesterday morning, about the saints and the inspiration from the saints, and in particular the writings of the saints, and an example. And we talked about Saint Therese, and then the decision was we would. And Story of a Soul is the book that we're given that came in her later years, and a reflection on her very short, by our standards, life. And so we were watching, for those online, we were watching the drama, the movie, last night. It's a one-woman play, and as far as we can tell, watching it, that's Saint Therese speaking. Yeah. How she talked about the ability to craft the character as you choose. She said, like clay, like you're working with clay. You remember that point? And that's exactly the point that Swami Sivananda is making here, and that character, and of course he gives us this. He says, an action reap a tendency, sow a tendency and reap a habit, sow a habit and reap a character, sow a character and reap a destiny, which is, of course, the same teaching. But this ability to make the choices in the inner world, and she did a very good job of differentiating the inner world from the outer world too, didn't she, in the reflections. So, okay, we'll continue then. And this is what she had learned. The next topic is subdue negative thoughts. This is clear from observing, listening, that she knew how to do this, right? Because she was dealing with a lot of negative thoughts. She had big expectations about how she was supposed to be treated. Her parents were supposed to be kind to her, and if they did anything that she considered to be unkind, she went into a fit. Something to look forward to, dear. Oh, it's great now. 2 years old? Something to look forward to. Oh. Okay. We'll just pick up at this point. The last part was conquer impure thoughts. And he made this point about if you can bring one thought, it will bring, if you entertain one thought, whether it's impure or good, it has a tendency to recur again, and it also brings its friends. He says, thoughts crowd together just as birds of the same feather flock together. So also, if you entertain one impure thought, all sorts of impure thoughts come together and attack you. But in the same way, if you entertain any good thought, all good thoughts join together to help you. So this is and so we say one step at a time, little. Swami Sivananda is very big about saying little of this, a little of that. So it's just in the moments. We're just working it in the moments. And granted, there are moments where we're blind and we're attacked. So, but also there are moments where sattva is more predominant and we have the capacity to see it and to switch it. So subdue negative thoughts. Learn to subdue, to purify, to order all of your thoughts. To order them. Fight against all negative thoughts and doubts. Let sublime divine thoughts come to you from every side. So we've already seen that the world is made of thought. This is up front. And we've seen it in our own experience. We forget it so easily, but we see it. And we've seen that neither a negative thought nor a positive thought are in and of themselves true. What we've seen, though, is the power of them, and we've seen that one type of thinking leads to bondage, and another type of thinking leads to liberation. And this is true. This is a law. It's a fundamental law of the universe, yes? So, in other words, people will say, when Gopala came, we'll use Gopala again as an example. We'll kick him down the road a little bit. So, Gopala was a terror, an absolute terror. As a young man, absolute terror. Like Saint Teresa on steroids. Because he was angry at everyone. And when he came, that anger was still right there, you know. If anyone did anything just a little bit wrong by his standards, he would go into a fit inside. And he was just learning not to go into a fit outside. Although he would tie so many knots inside that he would erupt. Yeah. And then what would he do when he erupted? Well, his mode is escape. He would run away. And he ran away from the ashram so many times. But he recognized, and by the time he got here, by the time he came here the first time, he was beginning to recognize the power of thought. But you see, his mode was anger. And from a perspective of anger, you can justify why to be angry. It's not that hard, is it?
No.
Because whatever scenario you paint out in your head, you'll find that to be true. If you paint to yourself a scenario that says, everyone here is stupid, nobody knows what to do, they're all killing the earth, boom, 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 whatever it is, then of course, anger, right? Because you'll see what you need to see in order to believe it, in order to accept it as true. Yes?
Sure.
Yeah. But if you tell yourself everyone here is a saint in the making, everyone here has a heart of gold, it just gets covered up, that you'll also find that to be true. And which one is more true? Well, we could argue about that forever, because one side will pull out all of the facts and they'll be able to justify, and the other side will pull out all of their facts and be able to justify. So you can't do that.
Sounds like politics.
But what you can say is, which one will lead me towards liberation and happiness? And there you will have a clear answer. And then if you say, and which one will help me to lead others towards liberation and happiness, there you will have a clear answer. And so that's it. It's not like, and from that perspective, if there's enough clarity, at some point you can say, oh my God, there is a truth which is not easily perceived here, which is underlying all of this, which is the overarching truth, which is whatever name we use, God or universe or mother or Allah or Christ consciousness or intuition or whatever it is. But when we're not all caught up in these negative patterns of thinking, then the mind starts to open, and within that opening, we find deeper truths that are real truths, finally, that are real truths, that can be pointed to and can be described in a way, but have to have open mind in order to understand. And so, So in the beginning, it's very tough to see why it is that the negative thoughts shouldn't be entertained. It's very difficult to see that in the beginning. But if we can somehow catch a hold of it and really take the baby steps and bit by bit, then more and more clarity will come.
Then we get tested.
Yeah, well, of course. Anytime you say, please help me to be free of something, then you'll get the opportunity to see it first.
Great.
Oh. Okay. So, subdue negative thoughts. He says, thoughts of depression, failure, weakness, darkness, doubts, fear, etc. are all negative thoughts. Weakness. I am weak. I'm incapable. It'll come. We talked about this for a little bit last night. A thought that says, I can't do that. She did that. That's also a negative thought. And we're not judging when we say this. We're just putting light on it. We're just saying it's a limiting thought. Because, of course, it'll be true. Whenever I say, I can't do what she did, then, of course, that will be true. But if we can say, I can do what she did, then, of course, that will be true. That's the power of thought. Thought is the one tool, the one shaper of our experience. It's the Buddha. Greatest teachings from the Buddha, the Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha, the first two sayings in what's called the twin verses, the chapter on the twin verses. He says, all that we are is the sum total of our thoughts. We are shaped by thought. We are made by thought. Think negative thoughts and sorrow will follow you as the wheel of the ox cart follows the heel of the ox. And then the second is all that we are is the sum total of our thoughts. We are shaped by our thoughts. We are made by our thoughts. Think positive thoughts, compassionate thoughts, and happiness will follow you in the way that the wheel of the ox cart follows the heel of the ox. So he has to say it both ways. So that we can hear both, so that we can hear, and this is the great teaching of the Buddha. When the Buddha talks about the Four Noble Truths and the way out, this is the great teaching. It has to be about working with the thought. So that's all we've got to work with. Oh. So what to do, we talked about yesterday morning. Fill the mind with divine thoughts, japa, prayer, dhyana, study of holy books. Be indifferent to all negative and undivine thoughts. Just let them be. Just let them be. Don't give them energy. Don't meditate upon them. Don't contemplate them. And they'll pass away. Do not struggle with them. Pray to God for strength. Read the lives of the saints. This is what got us on St. Therese, the story of a soul. That line. Study the Bhagavata and Ramayana. Okay. Overcome habitual thoughts. He says all sorts of habitual thoughts concerning the body, the dress, the food, and so on must be overcome through the Atma Chintana, which is the reflection on the nature of soul, of Atma, or truth. Reflection on within one's own heart. And he says it's uphill work. It's uphill work because what we find is these habitual thoughts keep coming. Even when we really, really, really are recognizing the nature of deeper truth, that even when we're really seeing that I am not the body, even when we're really seeing it, at first, of course, we're seeing it only when we're really reflecting upon it, which is why he's saying reflect upon it. But then the rest of the times when we're not reflecting upon it, then hunger comes and the same habitual stuff. And this drive comes and that drive comes. And then thoughts about money come and adequacy and what do I really want to do, which is the old raga dvesha thing, which is this program in us that says somehow 100% pleasure and 0% pain will be eternal happiness. So he says it demands patience, incessant practice, so abhyasa, don't stop, and inner spiritual strength. The Shrutis emphatically declare the Atman cannot be obtained by weak persons. Sincere aspirants dedicate their whole being to contemplation of the eternal, having withdrawn their affection from the world of sense objects. That's what we saw with Saint Teresa, of course. Those who have destroyed the vasanas, the tendencies of habitual thoughts, will enjoy their final beatitude in the Brahmic seat, replete with trust, quiescence, and equality. They will have equal vision over all. This mischievous and powerful mind generates all pains and all fears, all sorts of diversities, heterogeneity, distinctions and dualities, and destroys all noble spiritual wealth. He says, slay this troublesome mind. He's really talking about the slaying the self-centered nature, and the self-centered thoughts, habitual thoughts.
What is quiescence?
Quiet.
Oh.
When the seen and the sight merge into one another in the seer, then is the experience of ananda or bliss. This is turiya state. Then one sees the illimitable, without limits, jnana, Atman, only everywhere. Hari, did we love how she talked about practicing the presence of God? She said she was learning to see deeper, to see, right? To see what was really there.
7 years old.
Yeah, it's okay. We just hear and apply based on where we are right now.
Yeah, she might have had a lot more lifetimes though.
No, I mean that's very, very interesting. So you don't know, and the things that we don't know and that are not possible to know, are like, okay. I mean, better to say, I am where I am. Take the inspiration, take the learning, however it comes. Be grateful for it, apply it, because the rest is just kind of a speculation.
Yeah, it just makes me feel better right now where I am. Just because they're
Okay.
really young, they might have to be a lot older, like in lifetime.
Oh dear. Oh. Oh. These are actually funny questions, so we'll move. I mean, when did this start? The greats will say, since the beginning. The beginningless beginning. Okay. He says thoughts of attraction and thoughts of repulsion, likes and dislikes, raga, dvesha, are annihilated in total. Then there's not consciousness of the existence of the body, though they are working through it for the seer, the sage. We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, right? And there was some revelation there. Awareness of body is a uniquely egoic trait. Only when there's identification with the body is there awareness of the body.
Yeah.
Because actually, there's no body. You can get there too. Because any way you look at it, here we can just take this one. We can take the study of the atom, and of course the body is made of atoms. And we can say, okay, now what is the atom made of? Well, the atom is made of 99.99999999. There are 8 nines after the decimal point, percent space.
Yeah.
So if you take that view for a minute, you say the body is space. Or you can see that it's the 5 elements, and the 5 elements are universal. Or you can see that it's a protection of the mind. I mean, there are different ways to relate. But in any of these, any course of study that we take, any approach that we take to really look deeper at what this body is at a more essential level, we see is not what we take it to be. And we always get to where it's universal. It's not actually even separate, not actually separate. Nothing's actually separate here. So body then is a mental construct. It's a uniquely egoic construct. Body comes only when I say my body, or me as body. If I'm unattached to the notion of my body or separation, if I'm not attached to it, then I can be like a scientist and I can say, well, let's see what this is really. And then I can take any of these courses of study. I can say, well, it's atoms, or I can, at a lower level, I can say, well, it's muscles and bones and blood and vessels and flesh and yes? And it's animated by what? Well, it's animated by energy, life force. As a scientist, I don't know where that comes from, but I can see it. Yes? And what is the intelligence? Well, it's the brain. And what is the brain? Well, it's these neurons firing. Yes? It's these electrical impulses. So anyway you go.
It's life force too.
Yeah. And by the way, you will find that you are studying it, and therefore you are not it.
True.
Huh? And in that study, you'll develop a detached view from it. This is what we do in the study of Vedanta. We develop a detached view because we learn I'm not this body. So when you learn you're not something, then there's a detachment that's coming, right? So the sage is not identified with the body, which means for them there's no body. There's no separation. There's nothing separating us. See, the body supports the notion of being separate also. Because it's a perceived physical entity that separates you and me and makes you and me. If we were not wearing these bodies, where does the sense of you and me come from? So it supports that sensation. And if the sensation that you and I are separate falls away, what happens to the identification with the body? What happens to the notion of the body? Then it becomes, to the one who's not seeing separation, it's simply an appearance. And this is all mental work. It's the mind that in its habitual nature, in its deluded nature, it's in its magic, the magician form, because the mind is running a magic show. It's running a scam on us. In that form, it will give us the feeling of separation, that you're you and I'm me, and your name is this, and my name is this, and we're separate, and that, and then you get into what I do won't affect you, what I think won't affect what you think, all of that. This imagined separation.
So could you say the mind creates attachment?
The mind is of the nature of attachment.
Of the nature.
The mind is of the nature of attachment. And it needs to be attached to the truth, to God. And then it's all fine. But as long as it's trying to attach to objects of pleasure in order to have happiness, then it's just suffering after suffering because nothing lasts, and the happiness that it imagines in one object is not there. It's not in the object. It's inside. So it's just backwards. It's got everything backwards, and it's playing the magic show. It continues to tell you out there, this person, that person, this experience, that experience. It just continues to say that. But the same mind, when you get to the intellect, also is capable of recognizing through the work, but I'm not this, and the feeling is incorrect. Nice. And it feels a certain way, but it's not this way. It feels like we're separate, but we're not actually separate. The same mind, through the intellect, can work through it and see this body is an illusion. The scientists are doing it all the time.
Right.
At one level, a medical doctor, who's a type of science, will work with the body and not dive that deep. But the physicist who goes deeper will see it. We'll see it.
That works to deconstruct the physical body, but then we're still the astral body. We still have to reconstruct that.
Oh, you can tear that apart too, my dear. The same intellect can destroy that notion as well.
It's not made of blood or any.
Do you think that Shankaracharya destroyed that notion?
I think so.
Yeah. And when we're studying Shankaracharya, do you see that you can do it as well?
I can do it through the meditation, but not through the intellect.
Actually, that's a falsehood. Who chooses to meditate?
Mm-hmm.
Who chooses to meditate, Hari?
It's me.
Which means the intellect?
No.
How's that?
But it's like it's making a choice.
To meditate.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Anyone else just ask, like, what is the astral body made of? Right? It's like thought form.
Yeah, and when we study it, you're fine. Because when you actually study it, you get it. You're just saying that you still fall out of that. You still forget it. But because it seems like something else, and that seeming is so strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So today, you should pick up Viveka-Chudamani
Okay.
and read about the astral body today.
Okay.
Okay, and then let's talk tonight.
Okay.
Okay. Oh. Let's check in on you.
Okay.
All right. Oh, just a few minutes. We went to, there's discussion here about Atma Chintana, the nature of Atma. And that's where we've just gone, really, is contemplation of the nature of truth and contemplation of the nature of the body. And do you see that these are also thoughts, that what we're talking about are thoughts, that we're using the mind in order to tear apart the notions of the mind? So that's this Atma Chintana that he's talking about. That's the meditation on the nature of truth, meditation on the nature of soul, and meditation on the nature of the body. What we're doing right now, can you tell that this conversation, this particular conversation is meditation? Raja Yogan may say no. But can you tell that we're on one subject?
Focus.
Is your mind on this subject now? Yes? That's meditation. So this is exactly what he's prescribing. We just started to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all I'm just hearing in my mind, I'm translating everything you're saying into, I'm taking the jumping monkey that was running me and training it.
Oh, God bless you. That's it. That's it. That's it. And part of the training is what we do in satsang, which is, of course, training on the nature of the mind, the nature of thought, and all of this, but then also training on practicing with the tools. And also training by opening its horizons, helping it to be not limited anymore, not in the same rut, the same habitual rut, to learn to see in a more Catholic way, in a more holistic way, a more open way.
The best word, training into open horizons instead of too narrowly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. Thank you. And jumping monkey is a good one. That's Rajas. So here we'll just take this. along the lines of what he's discussing. He says, generally in untrained persons, 4 or 5 kinds of thoughts occupy the mind at a time. Household thoughts, business thoughts, thoughts of office, thoughts of body, thoughts of food and drink, hope and anticipation, some kind of planning to get money, some kind of thoughts of revenge, some habitual thoughts of answering calls of nature, bathing, etc. occupy the mind at a time. When you're studying a book with interest at 3:30 p.m., the idea of pleasure of witnessing a sporting event comes at 4 p.m. and that disturbs your study every now and then. It's only a yogi with one pointed mind who can have only one thought at a time and keep it as long as he likes. So this is what you're talking about, training the jumping monkey to stay in one place, in a beneficial place. If you watch the mind carefully, you'll find that many thoughts are inconsistent. The mind wanders at random, aimlessly. There will be some thoughts of the body and its wants, some thoughts of friends, some thoughts of acquiring money, some thoughts of eating and drinking, some thoughts of your boyhood, childhood. If you can study the mind, and if you have consistent thoughts of one subject or one kind only, to the exclusion of other thoughts, this itself is a very great achievement, is a great step in advancement in thought control. So do not be discouraged. Oh! Comments or questions?
Letting go of preconceived notions.
Oh.
Being open to something
Exactly.
greater than ourselves.
Exactly. You know, we're developing new habits in a way. So yogi takes a mantra, for example, and repeats the mantra, and it becomes a habit to repeat the mantra if we do it after some time. Mm-hmm. Or sits for meditation and develops the habit of sitting for meditation. Same thing. Okay. So you could say then that sitting for meditation or chanting a mantra becomes a preconceived notion. But the difference is, and then say, well, it's just one habit, trading one habit for another. So, good habit. The difference is that we're also learning to utilize the mind, the power of discernment, the power of discretion or discrimination, the ability to tell what's beneficial and what's not beneficial. And so in this way, we're opening it, we're purifying, we say, but we're utilizing the power of the intellect, where before, the habitual thoughts, we actually have no idea why they became what they became. You can go back to a childhood experience and find why a particular trait of anger might have come or why it might have been exacerbated. For example, you can see it. But then, if you use discernment, you can ask the question, is that beneficial now? And then you'll develop a new habit, which will be about using a tool. And it might be exactly what you said, Nataraj, a week ago, which was, instead of this thought, I replace it with, how can I help her to have a great day? I'm paraphrasing, but something like that, right? Okay. And it becomes a habit to do that. Really, we're developing beneficial habits in order finally to be free of habits. What we're accustomed to is we're accustomed to a world where 98% of thought and action is reactive. And we don't think about it, but this is true. So something happens, we react. When we react, that triggers something else to happen. And so the spiral, wars and all of these, the war that's playing out in Ukraine right now comes because of this. Reaction to reaction to reaction to reaction. But as we work with the intellect, Hari, in order to awaken the intellect, in order to pry it away from worship of the ego sense, and to get it to where it is the altar of truth, where it really becomes a student of truth. And that means it has to be Sherlock Holmes' intellect. It has to be completely open, and not accepting of prior notions. And the more we're successful with that, the more we come into a world where instead of reacting, we act. We don't react, we act. You go beyond the reactive habitual tendencies, you find yourself in the daylight.
Yeah. In the moment.
Right. And what happens to you doesn't affect what you bring to the situation. It shouldn't need to, you see, because that just perpetuates a cycle. And that's the animal nature. The animal nature is completely reactive. When you look at the animals, yes, there's thought and planning, but it's related to the instincts. In the human mind is the capacity, the capability to break the cycle, to come into the daylight, to be fully present and aware, and to come to a situation already knowing what you wish to bring to the situation. And you can be aware of the situation. I'll tell a little story in closing. Just a little story. There's as ashram was getting established here, one of our dear friends, Kailash, made us aware of a situation. And the situation was that there was a battle brewing at a dear friend's piece of property, and everybody was stuck in habitual behaviors, and it had led to a situation where the sheriff was coming out armed, and there was a good possibility that the people at this friend, Morgan and Puma, who have a retreat center not very far away from here, and all well-intentioned and all that, but reaction after reaction, and anger arising, and resentment, and all of this stuff arising and building up to a crescendo, and it's quite likely going to be something that could become an armed battle, and that's pretty darn common in these days, isn't it? So, and everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, but that's all the reactive stuff. And so I got involved in it. And the question is what to do. And the guidance that came was sit and chant mantra. And so sit at the gate and chant Om Namo Narayanaya. Sit there the entire time. Now, why? Well, the guidance I got was, okay, just do it. And I knew why, because it's a peace mantra, for goodness sake. So I sat there. I went out, I sat there. And people came, and the sheriffs came with their guns, and other people came, friends of Morgan's and all of that. And reactive mind, within reactive mind, fear arises, and one is subject to the tendencies that are arising. But in pure mind, you stay the course. You stay the course. Death won't bother you. Death won't concern you, because death just has to do with the body. Right? What someone says won't concern you, because you've gone beyond becoming upset by what someone says.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this is the daylight. So you develop a plan of action in consultation with the light. You go and take the course, and you play it out. So you're able to act instead of being subject to reacting all of the time. This is really where we're going. Developing beneficial habits is a result of real inquiry, vichara, and real vairagya, dispassion, not being so interested in how things happen to me and what happens to me anymore. But developing new beneficial habits, and then you come out into the daylight. And that's the goal of it, is to be able to recognize I am not from this world. I am not of this world. I am not this body. I am not this mind, but these are all tools, instruments in my hand with which to love. Living in love, as Saint Teresa said. With which to love, with which to bring love to the situation. Okay, we should close. Tao likes it.
Did you say the outcome of this battle?
Oh yeah, no, peace. No peace. There was no battle. After, Morgan tells the story like this. He says, after 4 hours, and he said, we're arguing and all this. The guns hadn't come out, but we're arguing and posturing and everything else. And he said, every time there would be a break, I would hear you sitting there chanting. And he said, after 4 hours, and he said, them too, they were hearing the same. And so he said, after 4 hours, the idea came, can we just make peace? And Morgan said it first. Can we just figure this out?
Yes.
And the sheriff said, yeah, let's try to figure this out. And they sat down, they worked it out, they wrote down the agreement, they shook hands, and everybody left. That's the outcome.
Thank you.
Oh, and we take no credit for any of that. Just the discernment to know what to do and the capacity to sit and do it. That's it. Okay, let's close. Final prayer in Arati, the short version. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashi Dukhabhag Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Mahamritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shānti Shānti Shāntihi. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Lord Sri Swami Sivananda Saraswati, and for all of the saints and sages of all traditions.